Hi, this is Victor Padilla with Latin Times Magazine and Latin Times TV. We're here with Attorney Dennis Hernandez. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
So, Dennis, tell us about yourself and your family history here in Tampa.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I was born in Tampa General. I'm a fifth generation from Hillsborough County. My mom's side was Florida Crackers, Denison, Mobley's, Coopers, and my dad's side was Spanish and Cuban. And so, I've lived here all my life.
So, what and who inspired you to become an attorney and be getting into law and so forth?
Sure. Well, first of all, I was the first person to go to college in my family, and my grandfather was a waiter at the Columbia restaurant, and he had a fifth grade education. He was born right in West Tampa. And he grew up through the Great Depression and all that, and I saw how hard, his life was. And he was the one that really emphasized the importance of education to me. He was probably about 35 years old when he started to dabble in buying old houses in Tampa, fixing them up, bringing them out, and he did very well. He was really, I would say, for my whole life, he was really my hero. He had very few chances in life, and he did extremely well. And he emphasized to me how important it was to get a good education so that my life wouldn't have to be as hard. And my dad, he tried to put that into my dad's head, but my dad would always say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
True.
So my dad graduated from Hillsborough High School. My grandmother, actually, Hernandez, graduated from Hillsborough High School. Her maiden name was Santos. And she graduated in 1938, I believe it was. I've got the yearbook still from Hillsborough High School. My dad graduated from Hillsborough High School. My mother went to Chamberlain High School. But my dad just had it in him. He didn't want to go to college. And so he ended up being a truck driver. And he had a very hard, physically labored job. He never made any money. He worked very, very hard. He wasn't a lazy guy. But there was a difference between working hard and doing something that the world will pay you well for. You can work hard doing stuff that, digging a ditch, but the world won't pay you a lot of money for that. And so his life, I saw, was kind of limited because he was a smart guy, but he didn't have the opportunities. And so the person that really moved me towards education was my grandfather. My mother dropped out of high school from Chamberlain at 16 years old, ran off, got married to my dad. They had to go up to Alabama to get married because at 16 you could get married up there. And then she got a GED education. She became a bookkeeper, worked for Hillsborough County in the school system, and then all the way up through being an accountant with them for 30 years, retired from Hillsborough County. And she never made any money either. And I saw how hard her struggle was. And my parents split when I was 8 years old. My mother never remarried. And, so I saw how people really took advantage of her. She wasn't educated. She was a woman. Of course, that was many years back. I'm 50 years old now. And I saw how difficult it was for both my parents because they didn't have the education. The education was the thing. And my grandparents wanted me to be a doctor. That's kind of what I started out in, but I didn't gravitate as well to it. And I really wanted to help people who were unfortunate. I've always, from the time I was young, probably 9 years old, I've always had the feeling that my destiny in life was to help the poor and the downtrodden. I mean, that's the phrase that I've always had in my mind, the poor and the downtrodden. And so I gravitated towards a profession where, number one, I could take care of myself, because if you can't take care of yourself, it's hard to take care of somebody else. First, you got to take care of yourself, right? I mean, when you're in a plane, they don't say put the oxygen on the child. They say put it on yourself first if we're going down, and then you got to put it on the child. So, so that's what kind of pushed me towards wanting to make money, and then wanting to help people and seeing that people's rights were violated. Just in my own personal experience in my life. I felt that I could do good in the world by becoming an attorney, by becoming a lawyer. And my dad, he was for me being a lawyer, because he kind of he saw being a lawyer as a great thing to do. So between all those factors, that's the direction that I chose. I'm glad I did. Yeah.
So tell us about. We want to talk about your passion for the community.
Sure.
And for kids.
Right. Well, I've got 3 kids of my own. They're 13, 12, and 10. I have a daughter and 2 sons. And my daughter's the oldest. My youngest son, 10 years old, he has Down syndrome. And he's high functioning, so he has a really great vocabulary, which I'm very fortunate, because there are Down's children who are nonverbal. There are Down's children that also have autism and other problems, and they can't communicate at all. So I've been really fortunate that my son, he's hilarious. I mean, of all my kids, he's the funniest. And he has the vocabulary, and he interacts with people well. So a couple of years ago, of course, I took my kids to the Gasparilla Parade. Being from Tampa, I love all Tampa things, I love everything. The Tampa skyline, I like the West Tampa, I like the buildings, I like the streets, the bricks in the roads that we have in some of the older sections, and I'm a Tampa kid, So I noticed going to Gasparilla that there were other children who had special needs. We'd always go to the kids' parade, then we'd go to the day parade. And I noticed there were kids with special needs, and they were spectators. So I thought, I don't see anybody doing this. And so there's a niche for it. It's something that I believe in. And I decided last year, hey, I'm going to rent a float. And you can rent them from the float company right here in Tampa. So I got Tico's old float. Tico's got a lot of money.
Yeah.
So they built a nice float. And
wow.
But they bought a new one. They got a new one. So the old one, they let me rent that. The float company did. So we did it last year, and we took the kids, and we ran a little announcement on TV. Anybody, it's free to them. And for the kids to show up with the parents and all that. They have to get on and off the float. I can't deal with the wheelchairs because there's no place to put the wheelchairs on that float. It's not set up for that. And so it turned out great. I mean, the kids just had a great time. Even the nonverbal children went prior to the parade. They were a little bit reserved.
Right. Got
them on the boat and started going to the crowd screaming. They're throwing beads.
Oh, wow.
And these kids just lit up. I mean, they just went bonkers. So it was, it was fun. It was a good experience.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And the parents were so grateful and everything. So that let me know that the kids really, really enjoyed it. And it was a unique opportunity for them. A lot of the parents told me they've never done anything like that before. A lot of these are from, fairly poor families.
That's true.
And so they don't have these kind of opportunities, and so it was so gratifying that I said, I'm going to keep doing this. And so this is our 2nd year doing it. And this year we're creating, my youngest son's named Dennis also. So we're creating the Dennis Hernandez after him, not me, but him, Down Syndrome Foundation here in Tampa.
Wow.
Because I haven't seen a lot of support for Downs. There is some support for special needs in other areas. Autism has a very nice setup here in this area to raise money for autism. But for Downs, there are no really significant groups attempting to help the specific needs of those children. And they have a good program over in Orlando, so I've gone over there and met with those people to see how they run it. And so I want to set something up here for parents who can get free medical care, checkups for their children once a year, run them through all the problems that Down's children typically have with the specialists lined up, and do that once a year, set up a medical fair for them to have that kind of treatment, raise money to pay for procedures and so forth for Down's children who can't otherwise afford it, and then to do the fun stuff too, set up some fun activities, the Tampa events that are part of our history and heritage that they can be a part of.
That's good. So I hear you let's talk about your passion for automobiles and motorcycles.
Right.
And I hear you got a couple of really nice automobiles. Tell us about that.
Sure, yeah. So, my dad was really into drag racing. He would take us to the Gator Nationals every year.
Wow.
I mean, he literally had a jacket with all the patches all over it. He went from the very first year it was started, before I was born, and so we'd go every year. And so Don Garlitz, and all this, he was actually out there in this last Gator Nationals. I'm starting to take my kids now to it,
Wow.
and he was actually out there signing autographs and things like that. So I've always loved cars as a result of him, and so currently I have a 1967 Mustang. It's a Pro Street, set up as a Pro Street car. It's crazy. It's got 750 horsepower. It's 527 cubic inch, all aluminum block.
Wow.
Set up as a Shelby Cobra motor, it's sick. So I take it out to those shows.
You take it on Gandy? At 9
I
on
have taken
Friday
it out a
night?
few. Yes, I have done that, but I'm a little older now, so I'm not running from cops
There you
anymore.
go. We can elaborate about that.
Right? Now in the rolls, I did get pulled over going 130.
Oh, wow.
Well, roughly 130. But the guy didn't have me on radar. He asked me how fast I was going. At that time, I really didn't know. So I said, I think about 55. He said, you were not going 55.
Hey, that's your word.
But yeah, so, I drive a Rolls, on a daily basis. Just because I never thought I'd have something like that. To me, growing up poor, I mean, like being able to drive a Rolls Royce it was like flying a spaceship.
Yeah.
I mean, that was not even within the realm of just grasping that as a possibility. And so, I've been extremely fortunate with regard to business and making money and those kinds of things. I've been really, really lucky. And but I love motorcycles. And I've got an Aston Martin, an old Aston Martin. I've got an old 1978 pickup truck. It's all jacked up. And
Those are nice.
Yeah, stuff like that. A couple of old Camaros, Trans Ams.
So now we're going to get to the most important question. What is your favorite Latin food, and do you love Cuban sandwiches?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So my favorite food growing up was Cuban food. My grandmother, Hernandez, was always cooking different, Cuban meals. And some of my favorite memories growing up were being at my grandparents' house right here on Hillsborough River. They were there since the 1940s. And they had a house right there on the river off of Perry Avenue between what used to be called Buffalo, which is now Martin Luther King, and Columbus Drive. And having the smell of the Cuban food throughout the house, and all the positive, the love and everything that went into the household. But I think probably roast pork with the onions on it and the mojo sauce, yuca and plantains. I mean, if they've got yuca and plantains on the menu, I can't pass that up.
There you go.
There
you go.
But the yellow rice and chicken, I'm getting hungry just talking about it. The yellow rice and chicken, and the Cuban sandwiches was a thing that my grandfather, we'd go out working on the old houses and stuff he had bought. I started working with him when starting at 8 years old. He'd take me in and we'd tear toilets out of old houses and rip up carpet, and he taught me how to repair refrigerators. He couldn't afford to call a refrigerator repair guy. It just wasn't that kind of rent. Couldn't pay for that kind of stuff. So he had to learn how to do each of these things, and that's when we would have the Cuban sandwiches. And they would be on Tampa Cuban bread that they put the palmetto leaf in there when they baked it, and then usually we'd get it pressed. And with the pork and the ham and the cheese and sometimes my grandmother would make them too with the pickles in there and mustard and so I love all that stuff.
So you know what a Cuban sandwich is.
Yes, I do.
So because you're going to be in the Cuban Sandwich Festival 2018 Cuban Sandwich Contest as a judge, correct?
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
So you can't eat anything the whole week before you do.
I have to wipe out the whole
You're
Cuban
talking
sandwich
about like 30 to 40 samples. You have to eat. Lots of water and bananas. So that's cool. And so tell us exactly what you do, what your law firm is about, and what what you do for the community through the law firm as well.
Sure. Well, I think we do a lot of good for the community through the law firm, through the actual business. And then, of course, we do things outside that are specifically community oriented. But in the law firm, all I do are motor vehicle collisions, the injuries that occur from motor vehicle collisions. I have 7 lawyers that work for me, and we have about 20 total staff. And we have it set up in a system in which we produce, in my belief, maximum benefit for every client that we get. I mean, my goal is to get the very best outcome for every single person that comes in the door.
Right.
Nobody's a number here. We pride ourselves on maximizing all of the medical treatment that's necessary for the person that they need and recovering every dime possible for that person. I would say probably 70% of our cases are in litigation, meaning that the insurance company didn't offer enough money, we file suit. If they don't offer enough money during the course of the lawsuit, we'll fight it as long as necessary. I pay all the costs. The client doesn't pay a dime. They don't pay a penny of anything until the very end when we get a recovery. And whatever it takes to spend, I'll spend literally $100,000 on one case. I will spend writing checks out of my pocket to bring the doctors and the radiologists and the experts and the physicists and biomechanical engineers and accident reconstructionists and whoever I've got to bring, the life care planners and the economists, and I'll put on the full case to the jury to get the maximum impact possible. So we try cases all over the west coast of Florida. We have tried cases all over Florida. We'll go anywhere in the state of Florida to handle a case. We have 2 offices in Tampa, Sarasota. We're opening an office in St. Pete in 2 weeks.
Oh, good.
So, and then we plan within the next 2 years to open an office in Orlando. There's a huge Hispanic market over there. And I personally believe that it's underserved by the attorneys in Orlando. And there are not very many Hispanic attorneys in Orlando in comparison to the percentage of Hispanics that are there. So I'm opening an office in Orlando in a couple of years, within 2 years.
So how can people get a hold of you and if something happens?
Day or night, 24/7. There's a lawyer on standby with a cell phone. All they have to do, no matter where they're at, is call the toll-free number, which is 1-855-LAW-DENNIS, and Dennis is with 2 N's, DENNIS, 1-855-LAW-DENNIS. And the local number here in Tampa is 813-250-0000. So if you take the commas out, it comes out to, if you take the dashes out, it comes out to 2.5 million.
There you go.
Is the
That
phone
sounds
number.
good.
It sounds like a good verdict,
Yeah,
right? So
a very good
let's
one.
shoot for that one.
So the first number that's statewide?
Well, it's nationwide.
Nationwide.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely.
Good. What advice can you give young attorneys in law school right now coming up in the same field that you're doing or any
Right.
other field? What advice do you have?
Sure. My advice, if you're just now in law school or you're going out to become a lawyer right now, is don't take a job based on how much money you're going to make. Take a job based on who are you going to become in that job. Because these are the stepping stones. A lot of people chase the dollar in this world, and it's not just in law practice. It's in every business. I've seen it throughout me being a lawyer, meeting a lot of people. And the people that chase the dollar, in my view, and I was guilty of that as a young man, to be honest with you, they're not happy because the dollar doesn't satisfy you as a person. And a lot of jobs may offer you a few extra bucks. I mean, we happen to pay very well here at this law firm because we are fortunate to get great results and have the money to pay the salaries. But there are a lot of law firms or places that they could work, that they could learn to become good lawyers instead of going to a place where they're paid a little bit more money and they're pigeonholed and they're not really becoming a great lawyer. They're not really doing what they want to do. And the other thing I would say is pick the area of law that you feel that you have a passion for, that you're connected to in some way, that you feel like you're doing the most good in the world. Because when you're real young, it's important in your mind to make the dollar, but as you get older, I think it's more important to be happy with what you're doing, to find what you enjoy. And there are a lot of different things in law, but I started out initially working for 300 lawyer law firms, 2 different law firms I worked for, and they were 300 lawyers apiece. And they did stuff for Fortune 500 type companies and super wealthy people. And I was a young lawyer, and they paid a few extra $1,000s a year than anybody else. And so that's why I took the job. But at the end of the day, you know, I realized as I got older, rich people have enough lawyers. You know,
Sure.
I want to do something to help people. You know, and it just happened to be that all my clients are poor and downtrodden, but when I get done with a case, the idea is that they're not going to be poor and downtrodden, you know?
Yeah.
And I get a percentage of it, so I actually make more money than I was making doing stuff for rich people.
Wow.
But I didn't switch because of the money. I switched because I was tired of helping people that already had plenty of help. I wanted to do some good in the world and feel good when I went home and feel like I'd made a difference that day in the world.
That's awesome. Okay, last question. Who in your life has been your hero in your lifetime, living or past?
Right. Well, I've had a few, obviously, during the course of my lifetime. I've had a few people who have set great examples, and I've tried to learn from everyone that I meet, because everyone that you meet, I believe, has something that you can learn something from. And it's our job, in my view, of course, to sift through the things that we hear and we learn and pick out the things that apply to us and then become the person that we want to become. But, you know, head and shoulders above any other person that in my personal life, that was my hero, was my grandfather, and Hernandez, and you know, and he passed in 1999, so it's been still so many years, but he was so instrumental in teaching me that just the basic principles of, you know, helping people, don't hurt people, don't envy people. If you see someone doing well in the world, he used to say, and this was a guy with a 5th grade education, he would say, don't envy them. Look at it as what's possible in this country. That they could do it, you can do it.
That's right.
And don't ever let anyone tell you can't do something. You make that decision for yourself. You can do whatever you want to do. Don't listen to anybody else to putting you down. Focus on what you want to do and take that direction no matter what anybody else says. And just stay with it and have faith that you'll be able to accomplish it. And there have been so many times in my life, and I'm sure there are in everybody's life, where, you know, those spots where, you know, you feel like you're in the dark about things and you're the only person out there and there's no one that can understands what you're going through, or you don't have a chance. And those words always kind of came back to me, and I go back to him and I think in my mind, what would he have said? And I can hear his voice. And so he clearly was my hero. With a 5th grade education, he ended up, you know, dying as a wealthy man, not just in terms of a nice house and car and money in the bank, but with a lot of friends, with very few enemies. He never said a cross word to anyone. He and my grandmother were kind to everybody they met. And they weren't like that in public and different at home. They were like that in both places, you know. And so when I was with them, you know, their love for Tampa and their love for people really, I think, shaped a lot of my desire to help people myself.
Well, that's awesome, and thank you so much, Dennis, for taking your time.
Thank you.
It's an honor to do this interview with you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.